14th of June 2017 will be marked in history, a date of nightmares, of death and of destruction. And everyone attending this conference and every member of our union will have shared the sense of horror at the appalling loss of life at Grenfell Tower. And that this happened in one of the richest boroughs in the capital city of one of the richest countries in the world is utterly shocking, a country which cannot keep people safe in their own homes. And firefighters and other public sector workers were on the front line that night and afterwards. And firefighters were sent to a fire that should never have happened. And the central question in all of this is, how can this even happen in 2018? How is it even possible that they can clad high-rise buildings in flammable cladding? And our normal procedures for dealing professionally and effectively with a fire in a tower block could not be put into action. And the truth is this, and we need to remind people of it consistently, that firefighters very deliberately and very consciously put their own lives at risk. I ask the community and the wider public to think of that simple truth, that firefighters deliberately and consciously put their own safety at risk in order to do whatever they could to save the lives of others. We need to remind them of the people outside that tower queuing up in breathing apparatus to be sent in, and remind them that that's what trade unionists look like. That's what the Fire Brigades Union looks like. We have members of this union, including members who attended that fire, who grew up in that community. And the idea that they, or indeed any other firefighter, treated people differently because of their race or background is not based on any reality I'm aware of, and in my opinion is a slur upon people who are simply trying to save lives.
One of my friends who got rescued from that tower, her name's Natasha, she lived on one of the upper floors, 10th or the 11th floor. In fact, we're old primary school friends. And it was a few days after the fire that she sent me a message on Facebook saying, "Oh, Dean, that photograph, that cover photograph on your Facebook profile, that guy, the fourth one from the right or left." I said, "Yes, I know who you're talking about." She says, "Send him my thanks. He was one of crew members that basically rescued Natasha, her boyfriend and their daughter."
Now we are participating in the public inquiry, and I want to thank those members for their candour in responding to those requests for interviews and for statements from the Metropolitan Police. And I want to thank the officials in London, but also from other brigades, because the scale of what we had to do was so huge, to provide a rep in every interview was so huge that we needed to seek support from across the country, and I thank everyone who assisted in that process. Now, in a few weeks, some of our members will have to give testimony to the inquiry. We will be doing whatever we can to support them, not just on the day, but before and afterwards. We want the truth, but we don't accept the idea of firefighters getting the blame for what happened.
As part of my role in the union, I sat in on the police interviews with two members, nothing compared to what's happened in London, but two members of Control. I had to listen and write down everything they said. I had to sit there and watch my colleagues break down as they answered questions from the police. And while I'm on the subject of the police, at lunchtime I've just seen on the news that London Fire Brigade are being investigated over the stay put policy. The police are looking at potential criminal offences. We don't want Fire Control's use of the stay put policy to be used as a scapegoat by the government as an excuse for their poor practices. Comrades, I will never know what it's like to go into a burning building. I work in Control, and as Kate said earlier, the jobs are very different. Equally, the majority of you in this room will never know what it's like to take a fire call. In particular, a person's reported call where you have to provide fire survival guidance. I listened to some of those calls from Grenfell, and in my 9 years of service, I have never heard anything worse. Lessons will be learned, and we must ensure that the concerns and thoughts of our control members are taken into account to ensure that in future we have fully robust practices and systems to be able to cope with such incidents. Please support I Move.
Best part of 1,000 FBU members attended the fire over the course of several days. Several hundred of them have given statements to the police as part of the police criminal investigation, which is subsequently informing the public inquiry. And my job has been to make sure that every FBU member who's been interviewed by the police has had an FBU rep in the room with them and has had the support of this trade union. And that has required the resources of the whole union. And we've had reps from all around the country coming into London and helping and supporting us with this process. And I extend my thanks personally for all of the help that you've offered to the investigation so far. And rest assured, there's some more work coming your way.
The public inquiry has begun, and you can see the blame game already starting. Days after the fire, the community started reflecting on what happened at Grenfell. Grenfell happened, A, because of austerity. Grenfell happened because of cuts. Cuts to the fire service being one of them. Grenfell happened because there's been a consistent emphasis over the last decades that public is bad and private is good, and that there's been a drain of resources from the public services and sector into the private sector. What happened at Grenfell was an attack on our class. Justice for Grenfell have 4 general key demands. Our demands are for truth. Our demands are for accountability. Our demands are for change, because without change, we're not going to have any justice. We also demand that those people who made those decisions, corporate companies, the TMO, the local authority, that those people are prosecuted. But we need a change in building regulations. We need a change in fire safety regulations. We need a change that means that ordinary people do not fear that when they go to bed at night, they may possibly burn in their beds.
Conference, it is my great pleasure to welcome John MacDonald. John has stood by this union through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad, and at a time when politicians were evading our picket lines, John and Jeremy Corbyn stood alongside us in solidarity. Conference, John MacDonald.
I just want to thank you. I thank you for the privilege of being able to attend this debate and listen to the debate. To be frank, which was emotional and at times harrowing to listen. And I went on the silent walk, the silent march last month. And as Matt said, it's one of the most moving things I've ever been on. And one of the most moving elements of it is halfway along, lining the streets, are FBU members. Many of those FBU members that went into the tower that day. That concept of private sector good, public sector bad. And you've seen what it's done to the fire service as well. Thousands of jobs gone. Our members' lives put at risk as a result. Fire stations closed. And yes, some fantasies going on as well about potential for further privatisations, even of our own service. That's what neoliberalism has done in terms of dominance of our thinking in politics. So today, a number of you said this is a turning point. Grenfell's a turning point. Well, it's more than just a turning point for how we deal with fires or how we house people. It's a turning point for politics in this country. You need courage sometimes, you've shown it, not just in your service, but also you've shown it in disputes as well. When you stand up sometimes, no matter what the media throw against you, and you're swimming against the stream, you have to, you know it's right, so you stand up courageously on principle. But above all else, I say it again, it's the most important things, the thing this union's displayed time and time again, we put it on our banners, unity is strength, injury to one is an injury to all. It's that quality of solidarity that will see us through. Solidarity.
We need to send a message that firefighters stand side by side with that community. We want truth, we want answers, and we want justice. And this union and firefighters stand with them in that. We in the FBU, and I'm sure alongside others here, will leave no stone unturned to achieve this. I move justice for Grenfell.
Finally, I will leave you with this. We've called for a turning point. Comrades, it's our job to get out there and make sure this genuinely is a turning point in the fire service and in society. Justice for Grenfell, I second.